Thank you all for coming to my art break. My name is Nibha Akireddy, and I am currently a master's student in electrical engineering here. But I finished my undergrad last year, so this is my one-year master's year. And I'm also a student guide at the Cantor and Anderson collections here at Stanford. Thank you for coming. And today, I want to talk a little bit about a topic I'm really passionate about and really excited to talk about. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the biggest new developments at the Cantor Arts Center, which is the upcoming launch of the Asian American Art Initiative, or AAAI. The initiative was formally announced in January, I think, and it'll have its first exhibition in July later this year. But I'll talk more about upcoming events and exhibitions towards the end of this presentation, so stay tuned for that. And as a sneak peek into AAAI, I'll be talking about two of my favorite works in their initial collection, which happen to be by artists who are very involved in Bay Area communities, especially in and around San Francisco, which has been an incredible historical hub for Asian American artists and art and communities. And as an Asian American artist who grew up in the Bay Area and currently goes to school here, I'm just really excited to talk to all of you today about this new initiative. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Nibha Akireddy, and I am in my 5th and final year at Stanford, finishing my co-term in electrical engineering. So that just means I'm doing a master's right after my undergrad. And I joined the team of student guides at the Cantor and Anderson last year during COVID. So I'm very used to this virtual format and talking about art online. And I'm really glad to have all of you here today, including people who might not have been able to visit in person. So there's always a silver lining in the virtual format. I've actually been an artist my whole life and have spent a lot of time at Stanford as part of different arts communities. But because I'm not really a major or a minor, I realized I wanted to be more plugged into the art community, which brought me here to be a student guide, and I've enjoyed it a lot. It's a great opportunity. Yeah, and I've loved learning how to think about and talk about art and how to visit museum, because it's not something I really grew up doing a ton. And that being said, I know I didn't always know how to speak up in museum spaces, but I just want everyone to know that this is a super chill, open environment, and I want to encourage as much participation as possible. There's a chat function at the bottom of your screen, so please feel free to ask any questions or leave comments throughout the presentation. And I'll be asking you all questions throughout. So please feel comfortable dropping any of your ideas or thoughts in the chat. And now that we've covered that, I want to move on to talk a little bit about what AAAI is and some of the leaders behind it. So the Asian American Art Initiative was started by co-directors Marcy Kwan and Elisa Alexander. Marcy Kwan is an assistant professor of art history here at Stanford and actually started and teaches Stanford's Asian American Art History course. Elisa Alexander is the assistant curator of American art here at the Cantor Arts Center, and she's responsible for acquiring art by Asian American and Asian diasporic artists for the collections, and has actually been responsible for a lot of the acquisitions that are now part of the AAAI. AAAI is dedicated towards establishing community programming and helping with student research around Asian and Asian diasporic art, and highlights this incredible variety of identities and backgrounds under the Asian diaspora. So the first piece, I guess we'll move on to the first piece I want to talk about today, which is actually part of AAAI's initial collection of over 141 works of art. So here's the first presentation of the painting. As you can see, it's called Chinatown Dragon and is by an artist named Martin Wong. And I'll give everyone a minute to observe this piece. I would love to see some of your observations in the chat. You could comment on what forms you notice, what your favorite part of the painting is, what colors stick out to you, or just what you find interesting or what it reminds you of. Yeah, so feel free to just type whatever you notice. And we can turn this into a nice little discussion with everyone. Yeah, we have a comment that says that people are drawn to like the blue of the background, which is like a very bold blue that really sticks out. We have a couple of people who notice the faces, faces between faces, with faces within faces. Sorry, that's a really interesting observation. It kind of gets in all the patterns and all these like really intricate details. The two children in the lower right are a really interesting observation because they're kind of a little bit hidden in view, but it kind of feels like this dragon comes out from them. It appears to be dusk. And I think part of that is because of these orange lanterns, right? They kind of feel sunsetty and very warm. And with this blue background, it kind of feels like night. We have a comment that says, it seems very personal, just the children and the dragon. Yeah, definitely. I feel like, yeah, that's something I wouldn't have noticed before, but the whole environment seems very intimate. And because it's these children in the corner, they seem very close to each other, right? And this seems like a very personal scene. We have a comment that says, the building on the lower left seems more like a facade than an actual building. Yeah, that's a really interesting observation too. Yeah, these are all great observations. And in the next slide, just in case you want a little more information about the painting, the screenshot is actually taken directly from the Cantor's website, and it gives you a little bit more information about the piece that you'd otherwise be able to see a little bit of this in person in the little plaque next to the painting. So the first thing I want to point out is the dimensions of the piece. So in case you don't want to do the conversion from inches to feet, this piece is almost 7 feet tall and about 4 feet across. So it's pretty big, which, if you can imagine, makes everything feel really powerful and bold. And this painting kind of towers in front of you. And this is the artist, an artist named Martin Wong. This painting is by the famous Chinese American artist named Martin Wong. He was raised in Chinatown in San Francisco. And something I love to point out is that the outfit you see here is kind of Martin Wong's uniform. Any pictures you find of him online are going to be in like jeans and a cowboy hat, and cowboy boots. Other pictures have a cowboy hat. Sometimes he has a guitar. So Wong's father was actually half Mexican, so he strongly identified with Latino culture and how multicultural his heritage was. A lot of his paintings explore his cultural identity, his sexuality, and his relationship to the communities he lives around and interacts with. So back to another view of the painting. Martin Wong is actually really well known for his paintings made during his time living in New York on the Lower East Side. But after being diagnosed with AIDS, he moved back to San Francisco to live with his family for the remainder of his life. This painting was actually a gift from the Martin Wong Foundation as a thank you to Stanford for taking care of the Martin Wong Papers, which are a collection of writings and poetry, sketches, and various memories from Martin Wong's life. AAAI is actually working with the Martin Wong Foundation to create a catalog of his works and recontextualize him as a San Francisco native artist, kind of emphasizing the importance of this Bay Area upbringing and his identity and his work. This painting was actually made about a year before Wong moved back to San Francisco, but you can very clearly see the influences of growing up in Chinatown on this painting, right? With the imagery of the dragon, and just the buildings in the background, the lanterns. And at the time, in both San Francisco and New York, graffiti was a very popular form of art, which you can also see expressed in the bold lines and the really bold colors. And also, I guess a lot of people pointed out the two children in the corner. So Wong was actually a very avid collector of archival imagery. So he collected a lot of studio portraits from the 19th century of people he definitely didn't know, just different portraits of random people. And yeah, a lot of art historians assume that these children in the corner are kind of taken from these pictures that he collected. Yeah, so I guess we'll move on to our second piece, which is a little bit different from the original painting that we were looking at. So this piece is actually a sculpture. And I'd like everyone to think of it as you maybe would see it in real life. So I'll give you all a little more time to just look at this piece. And I'd love to know what you see. Just drop it in the chat, because I feel like first impressions of this piece in particular are always really interesting, and just, there's a huge variety of what people see. So I'll give everyone a minute or so, and we'll see when comments start coming in. We have a comment that says someone's thinking of networks and roots and interconnections, which is a cool observation because of the whole branching out structure. Symmetric but balanced. Two trees, yeah. So a lot of people see a lot of different imagery in the whole branching structure. Does anyone else have any observations, ideas? Tumbleweed, definitely. Oh, sorry, asymmetric but balanced. Yeah, there's definitely like, it looks very natural, but there is a balance. Brain synapses. Yeah, it feels like a lot of people are coming from very different fields. I think when I first saw this sculpture, I thought lungs. This kind of seems like two structures branching out from a middle branch. So this is actually a screenshot from the Cantor's virtual tour online that you can all visit on the Cantor's website. And this is how the piece is currently on display in the Cantor. Does anyone have any thoughts or observations about the way this sculpture is hung up? I think for me, I just love the shadows a lot, the way it's lit, because it feels like multiple sculptures in one. And it kind of looks like the sculpture's floating, but casting these other sculptures. And it's also nice to look at this photo when we're doing like a 2D virtual tour, because you kind of get more of a sense of the whole 3D structure and like looking at the sculpture from different angles. So here's another screenshot pulled from the Cantor's page with more information about the sculpture, its size. So this sculpture is Untitled, and it's by an artist named Ruth Asawa. Someone in the chat asked if the artist requested the shadows. I'm not sure in particular. That was a question I had too, but I know the Cantor has had other sculptures by Ruth Asawa in the past, and they've also kind of been lit in a weird way. A lot of her sculptures are in the De Young Museum in San Francisco, and they're also lit in a way that kind of casts these weird shadows on the walls and creates other sculptures. So that's a really good question. One thing I love to note about this sculpture is the medium. So a lot of people maybe noticed a tree-like structure or something natural. Someone said they were a hiker, so loved art made of natural products. But it's really interesting that the sculpture is made of metal. So it's made in copper or bronze wire, even though it looks like actual trees or something natural. So this sculpture is made by an artist named Ruth Asawa. And this photo here is captured of her making some of the work she's most famous for, which are her looped wire sculptures. But this work is part of her tiered wire sculptures series. And she describes the form as, like a lot of people noticed, tree or branch-like. So she starts with a stem that ends up dividing into branches and flows into really abstract forms. And this quote kind of describes Ruth Asawa starting her tiered wire sculptures. She says, "I started in 1962 when a friend of ours brought a desert plant from Death Valley and said, 'Here's something for you to draw.' I tried to draw it, but it was such a tangle that I had to construct it in wire in order to draw it. And then I got the idea that I could use it as a way to work in wire. I began to see all the possibilities, opening up the center and then making it flat on the wall and putting it on a stand." So I think it's really cool to think of, I think it's really cool to think of these sculptures as kind of a way that she draws in 3D. and kind of a way to give structure and form to some of her drawings. So here are some other examples of some of her tiered wire sculptures, and they're all very organic shapes, right? She noted that she was very inspired by plants and snail shells, natural phenomena like bees' wings and insects. And interestingly enough, she's actually listed some of her inspirations as mathematicians, which you really see come through in these works and how they look ordered, but also geometric and organic all at the same time. But it's interesting to note, like, those things aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like, nature is full of all these incredible patterns and designs that happen for some mathematical reason. And moving on to a little bit more about Ruth Asawa's life. So Ruth Asawa was a huge figure in arts activism and education in San Francisco. She moved to San Francisco in 1949, where she spent the rest of her life until she passed away in 2013. Arts education, and more importantly, accessible arts education, were really important to her. She was instrumental in the creation of the first public arts high school in SF, which opened in 1982, and was later renamed the Ruth Asawa San Francisco School of the Arts in her honor. She created a lot of public works also, and they're still around in San Francisco and San Jose, still on public display if you ever want to see them or visit. And we're very glad to have her work exhibited here, where the museums, the Anderson and the Cantor, are free and open to all, which is definitely a part of her mission to make art very accessible and open to everyone. A huge acquisition new to the Cantor is Ruth Asawa's Wall of Masks, which will debut with the Asian American Art Initiative's first exhibition in July. And this wall is made up of 233 masks made from the faces of her friends and family, and it's just like a beautiful record of the people she interacted with in this area, and is a work that's like really specific to the Bay Area Asian American arts community and just the people in this area. And here I've pulled this screenshot also directly from AAAI's website. And here are some upcoming exhibitions that you can see. I encourage all of you to keep up to date and definitely see some of these exhibitions as they come out. Yeah, Mackenzie dropped a link in the chat that says more about Asian American Art Initiative and their website, where you can learn more about the team, the history, and their mission, which I think is really exciting. And I definitely will be attending all of these exhibitions and would love to see any of you there. And the last thing I want to note before finishing this presentation is that the Cantor and the Anderson are now open for in-person visits. Both of the works I talked about today are on show. Both of them are in the Cantor, but both museums are open. Student guides like me will be giving tours on a few days, mostly weekends. And here are the hours and a few of the websites that you can visit. But that's all I have for this presentation. Thank you so much for attending. I'll definitely stick around right now for a Q&A in case any of you have questions about the works or about me or just about life working with the Cantor and the Anderson. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I can answer them right now, because we have a little bit of time before 12:30. Yeah, so I have a question that says, what has been your favorite experience as a student guide so far? I think I've been really excited to meet a lot of new people, new students, and especially the staff at the Cantor and Anderson, especially because this is a resource that's free to everyone, but is also like right in my backyard as a student here. And I'm just like learning about all these incredible resources that I couldn't get anywhere else that I really want to take advantage of. Oh yes, I have a question that says, could you please repost the events on the second to last slide or drop info here? The link that Mackenzie dropped, it's museum.stanford.edu/AAAI. Yeah, there should be an events tab on that website that links you to all the upcoming events. I have a question that says, what are you planning to do with your knowledge of art and art history? Yeah, super good question that I'm trying to figure out right now. So I'll be graduating this year. And I've been painting a lot, especially during pandemic, but I definitely want to still be involved with like galleries and museums, just getting to know the art communities and wherever I live next, wherever that might be. And I definitely want to keep painting and see where that career takes me. So I'll update you in a year and see what happens. I have a question that says, how will your engineering training affect your future work? Yeah, I think I've always considered my like engineering and art very similar, just because I do a lot of math on my engineering side and art is kind of, I don't know, mathematical and structured. So it kind of feels like the same thinking, even though I don't have to necessarily make them overlap in the art that I do. I think it's just always, both have been fun for me. Oh yeah, I have a question that says, someone would like to hear more about my art practice, and ask if there are any similarities or themes explored in Asawa or Wong's work. Yeah, I think I really do like to paint about my communities and just like friends that have made me become like a better person throughout my time in college. I love painting my friends. And Martin Wong has always been like a very huge inspiration to me. He's definitely like one of the artists I look up to. Yeah, I just love painting my friends and communities. And I like thinking about my cultural identity through my art and just kind of like learning about new histories, and applying those to my art. I have a question that says, what do you make of the Stars of David all through Asawa's work? Oh, that's a super interesting question. I actually didn't know about that or really know much about that, but I feel like I'll definitely look into it now that you pointed that out. I have a question that says, any favorite classes you've taken that have impacted your art? Yeah, I've actually taken a lot of like English and history classes. I took a class called The Indian Novel, and a class about gender in modern South Asia that I feel like have really impacted my art in a very surprising way because they're not directly art classes. I've also taken a few art classes here on campus that are actually in the med school. So I've done a lot of things with anatomical art and working with the resources at the medical school, which is like a really interesting crossover. And again, like resources that I probably won't have access to after I graduate. So it's been nice to take advantage of those. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this presentation. Hope you all have a good one, and I hope all of you visit the Cantor and Anderson. Oh, I have one last question, sorry. What graduate studies do you anticipate for yourself? So I'm actually a graduate student right now. After I graduate, I think I'm going to take some time, do some jobs, figure out art and engineering, how those play into my life. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now, kind of taking things as they go. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think, yeah, it seems like questions are tapering out a little bit, so I'll end our time right about now. But thank you again.